And welcome everybody. This is just a quick rundown on what it takes to be a recreational drone pilot. If you are interested, I could always email this PDF out to you for your own reference. This was something that I created using Lucid, the Lucid suite. So that is free. There's no copyright on it. Originally, this was created to be a flyer, so when it's laid out in its full span, that's why it's kind of got a weird order to it. On this page, we're actually going to go from right to left. I know that's backwards, but you know, it is what it is. In regards to the recreational pilot, since I'm not here in person, I am going to go over most of these bullet points and you know, to try and clear up any questions. But you can always email me at the end if. I just realized I didn't put my email on there, but I'll make sure and state it. You can always email me with questions later. So, recreational pilot, what does it mean to be a recreational pilot? And that is best summarized right here, in that you are not compensated in any way, shape, or form. It gets tricky. I encourage a lot of people to go ahead and get their drone pilot's license, so that way they never have to worry about whether they fall into that compensated category. And here's just a quick rundown of what it means, you know, to be compensated and be in violation of that rule. So a while back, I was helping my wife's cousin with some mums, and I actually took the drone and I flew it up. And he was able to align the pots the way that he needed to under the sprinkler. So if we had gone up there and he said, "Hey, would you like some mums?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm here. I've got my drone. Let's do this." That's fine. That's fine. But if the order was reversed and I went up there, I'm like, "Hey, I've got my drone. Let's take a look at this." And then he said, "Hey, would you like some mums?" Then you are now crossing into a blurred area of compensation. Because did he give you the mums because he wanted to give you the mums, or did he give you the mums in terms of a reward, so to speak, for your time and effort? So compensation also does not just mean money as well. That's part of why I like that example in particular. So it's any kind of compensation. So we're going to talk about we're going to go over federal regulations and then state-specific regulations specific to the state of North Carolina. If you plan on flying somewhere else outside of the state of North Carolina, you need to make sure and look at their rules. As far as federal, so this page one is mostly federal, and or sorry, page one is all federal, but then page two is where we get into the state. Even if you are a recreational pilot, no compensation. You don't plan on making money directly or indirectly by way of drones. You are supposed to register your drone if it meets a particular weight requirement, which I will get into in a moment. You are expected to take the trust exam. It is free. If you just go online, if you go to faadronezone.faa.gov, you'll find links to the trust exam, but you are expected to take it even for recreational pilots. And it is highly encouraged that you download the Before You Fly app, or you can access it online like I have here. And a lot of good information here that can pop up if mine will ever load. I use Overhills High School as a base, and you can see, so in one section, one part of the school, it's okay for me to fly. I don't need permission. But then in another part, in the school itself, then I would need to fly. And the Before You Fly app takes care of all of that. It'll even give you the explanation as to why it's okay to fly and not. You can see it still says Fort Bragg instead of Fort Liberty. But I'll hit a few other examples towards the end of this video, just so you can see a couple of things about it. So it's highly encouraged that you download the Before You Fly app. There's local regulations that you have to be aware of, but Before You Fly catches most of them. But say, for instance, if you live in a city district, they may have some things that aren't necessarily on the Before You Fly app because they may not be recognized by the FAA. The Before You Fly is the FAA's baby. It's partnered with Aloft AI, or Aloft IO, not AI. So you just always need to be aware of where you are. Don't fly over people or moving vehicles. That can get you in trouble with federal laws if something were to happen. You need to have minimum visibility of 3 statute miles, so you always want to check the weather. Statute miles, because there's nautical miles and a couple of others actually taken into consideration, but the statute mile is your standard mile of 5,280 feet. Do not fly in bad weather. Now some of the that's kind of a judgment call, but if it's windy and then your drone crashes into somebody, even if you were not intentionally flying over somebody, then you could fall into federal violation. But there is no set standard as to what qualifies as bad weather, because bad weather also depends on your drone. The larger the drone, some of the higher winds that it can handle, maybe. So there is no line in the sand that I can tell you from here. Do not fly near sensitive areas, schools, hospitals, prisons, airports. If you think it's stadiums, if you think it's not a good idea to fly, then it's probably not. So just trust your instinct on that one. Don't take pictures or video without of anything that's not yours without permission. Now, I went back home and visited my family over the 4th, and this kind of came up, and they're like, yeah, you can't take pictures of other people's property. Well, it depends on what you mean by other people's property. I actually took some pictures of where I grew up, and I asked the person who lives there now. I'm like, hey, is this okay? This was my home. They said yes, that's fine. Well, I am almost 400 feet in the air. And so naturally, some of the pictures contain properties of former neighbors of mine and that kind of stuff. Well, that is okay because you are not flying over their property, but there's a North Carolina rule that says you can't use this as surveillance, and so it gets very tricky. So basically, if somebody else's property is off in the distance, then you're okay. But if you are flying up and you are intentionally taking pictures of their property, that's where it becomes an issue. So just kind of be mindful of that. It is also federal violation for somebody to shoot your drone out of the air. I'm going to say that again because I hear that a lot. If your drone flies over my property, I'm going to shoot it out of the sky. It is a federal violation to shoot any aircraft out of the air, and drones count. Doesn't matter their size. If somebody shoots down your drone, then you could possibly take them to court, to receive proper compensation, and they could go to jail for discharging a firearm into the air. If they shoot your drone down because you're taking pictures of your property, that's your gamble. Okay, so just use your head on that one. Apply procedures to mitigate risk and harm of others' property. In other words, fly safely. And if you're going to be doing something where you know that there is a risk, do everything you can to minimize that risk. If you're going to be doing twilight or night flying, then you have to have special lights. Most drones do not come with these kind of lights installed. They have to be visible for 3 statute miles. At the school, if you want to stop by, I can show you the white intense lights that are on the DJI Mavic 2, and they're bright. You shine those in your eyes, it is going to hurt. It's brighter than any flashlight that I own. But those still do not meet this classification. Okay, they are special lights that you have to have. So if you know you're going to be doing night flying, look for a drone that either has it built in or look for essentially a night flying kit. Follow the I'm safe rules for determining whether or not it is safe for you to fly. Now, this is a federally recognized acronym, so it's probably a good thing to just kind of be aware of it. I call a lot of this common sense, but it is what it is. illness, medications, stress, alcohol, fatigue, and eating. I'll let you read through this. But one thing I will say about medications, you know, use your head. Obviously, stuff like, you know, if you're on any of the oxy medications, you know, any kind of narcotic, then no, definitely do not fly, because you can get in serious trouble with that. But then some of it becomes a judgment call. I used to take like an anti-anxiety medication that would, you know, just put me to sleep. Obviously, I don't want to fly if I'm going to be, if I take any of that medication. I take a blood pressure medication that is supposed to make me groggy, but I don't have any problems with it, so that's fine. But for somebody else, it may not. If I take cold medicine, most of them I'm fine with, but there's oh, I can't remember. It's one for people who have blood pressure problems. That if I take that medication, I can put my hand on a wall and it'll look like my hand is sinking into the wall. It's an OTC medication. I do not want to fly a drone when taking that medication. You know, anybody who is watching this video could take that exact same medication and it's totally fine. For me, it's not, and so, you know, that's a personal restriction. So use your best judgments in all of this. In the event of an emergency of any kind, if a drone isn't working right, you know, minor emergency, if it sounds funny, or, you know, if there's a big catastrophic failure, try and land the drone as quickly and as safely as possible. You know, what if it lands on somebody else's property? Well, it's kind of like, well, what if you toss a frisbee and it goes over the wall and lands in your neighbor's yard? You know, legally you have to have their permission. Sometimes, you know, first, you shouldn't be flying over somebody else's property that you don't have permission for anyway, but sometimes the drone will drift, and, you know, as much as I hate to say it, even if it was totally by accident that the drone ended up on somebody else's property, you still need to get permission to go and retrieve your drone. Otherwise, you could be charged for trespassing. UHF radios, ultra high frequency radios, are optional. You don't need to buy a radio, but they are certainly recommended. Now, something here when talking about like registration and the FAA drone zone, all that stuff. Here we go. First off, if you're flying as a recreational pilot, the drone must weigh less than 55 pounds. If you find a recreational drone that weighs more than 55 pounds, please reach out to me, because I want to see what this thing looks like. Some of the largest drones that I've ever seen top out at about 40. They have to be registered at the drone zone. That's that FAA drone zone website, unless they are less than 250 grams, which is approximately 0.55 pounds, in which case then you subvert a lot of these regulations. You don't have to register it. Technically speaking, I don't know how many of these apply, but even if your drone, let's just say that your drone weighs exactly half a pound, if you fly that over somebody and run into somebody with it, you know, and it creates injury, you could still be held liable for that. You know, just the same if you smacked them with a tennis racket, you know, so always keep that kind of stuff in mind. You do have to be able to see your drone at all times of flying, maintain visual line of sight. So one of the big ones is do not, even though like a lot of these drones can fly further than what you can see, and then it's just like, well, can't I use the camera on the drone? Legally speaking, no, you cannot. You know, that camera is there to help you get the perfect shot, but you are supposed to watch the drone at all times. You don't use it as a flying mechanism. FPV, first-person view goggles, are not allowed unless there is some kind of special condition going on. So like a lot of racing drones use the FPV goggles. And if you are at a race, then they already have kind of overridden that rule. Okay, do not interfere with other aircraft. FAA violation anytime you interfere with other aircraft. And that's just in general. So if you use a drone to do it, then you kind of get a double double punishment. First for interfering with aircraft, and then using a drone to do it. Do not fly in controlled airspace without permission. That's where this Before You Fly app comes into play, because you can tell it to access your current location based off of where you are. So like mine's going to go up to Fuquay here, so that way you can see approximately where I am, and if I'm in these regions, it's all clear. However, I'm in city limits, so I have to be careful here. But if I go up to, say, for instance, kind of near the RDU airport, you can see controlled airspace don't fly here. This one's a little bit different because it's picking up Carter Finley Stadium, go Wolfpack. But you can click on this more, and then you can read that there is a I did not realize this. It's 3 nautical miles of stadium. So if there's ever going to be an event, so like a football game or something like that at Carter Finley, then 1 hour before the event and 1 hour after the event, you cannot be within a 3 mile, and that's nautical miles, which I think is 6,000 feet instead of the 5,280 that you cannot fly in this region. So again, this Before You Fly app is really good, and I'll come back and talk about this one here in a little bit. This is very close to where I grew up. I was actually in right around here on the 4th. So okay, there is a program called Lance that you can use if you need to fly in some kind of controlled airspace. If I remember right, Before You Fly, when you're trying to access these, when you're trying to get permission to fly, it'll automatically, right here, Lance, it'll automatically pull up the Lance request. See, right here, get Lance, and then that's how you can apply to fly in a particular area if you happen to be there. So just a little bit of an FYI there. Fly at or below 400 feet at all times. If you are a commercial pilot, there's lots of rules here where if you're a commercial pilot, if you have your pilot's license, that you can circumvent. Like I can fly over 400 feet depending on what kind of structures that I'm around because I have my pilot's license. But that you got to take my class to learn that. I'm not going to do that one here for free. Okay, that trust exam, make sure that you keep that certificate with you at all times. Pretty much any authority, whether local police, whether wildlife, fish and game, got to be careful there in North Carolina. State troopers, federal police, anybody who's in a position of authority. If you're a recreational pilot, they can ask to see if you have your trust exam. And if you cannot reproduce that certificate, which I think you can download that online, you could potentially face a fine if you do not have it. Mark your drone with a registration number. I'll be honest, this one kills me because you go and you spend a lot of money, you buy this really nice drone, and then you have to write on it. Or I used a label maker, and that's what I printed it out. And so it kind of ruins the aesthetic of the drone, but you got to put your registration number. What registration number? The registration number that you get whenever you register your drone at Drone Zone. Okay, that'll be the number that you put on there. If you do not already own a drone, then you don't have to worry about finding a remote ID, because all drones current, if they're of any size, are going to have some kind of remote ID, whether it's built into the app that you use to control the drone, whether it's built into the drone itself. You cannot turn this off to fly except in very designated areas. But I'm not even going to go into that because it's just best to go ahead and broadcast your remote ID. Do not carry any kind of hazardous materials or weapons. If you have to ask whether or not it qualifies as either of these, chances are it counts. Don't don't transport it. Let's see. Yes. let's hit this middle part. Let's hit this middle part first. It's been a while since I created it, so I don't remember quite the order that I go in. When in doubt, take the action that results in minimal harm. Crash the drone before you crash into people. Just kind of like if you're driving a car. Take the action. Take the action that's going to have the best possible outcome if you can. Emails. When we get to the end of this, I'll mention my email again. But please email me if you have questions. Especially about kind of case by case scenarios. But it's just like driving a car. How heavily you are punished if there is a car accident, it totally depends on what circumstance happens. You're driving down the road, you cross a double yellow line, you might get a ticket. If you're driving down the road and a kid runs out into the road, and so you cross a double yellow line to avoid the kid, you're probably not going to get a ticket. So it just, everything depends on what's going on at the time. Always have a plan B whenever you are flying. Just try and think through, before you fly, because most people who do this for fun, you're either just going to take the drone out and whip it around and try and fly as fast as you can. What is your plan B if something were to happen? Other recreational pilots are trying to take pictures and pretty pictures and video. Again, if something were to happen, what do you do? And how do you handle that? So always be mindful of those. State-specific regulations. I'm going to start over here on the left and then jump over to the right. We're almost done. Most of the state regulations mirror the federal regulations. Less than 55 pounds. Has to be registered unless less than 250. You have to be able to see your drone. Don't interfere with aircraft. Don't fly in controlled airspace. Use LANCs. You can also, if you need controlled airspace authorization, you can also go to Drone Zone, and that's the system that I've used in the past. Fly at or below 400 feet at all times. So just a recap, really, of the FAA regulations. And if that isn't enough, I do want to point out, because I actually went and took the North Carolina statutes, and then I kind of copied them over, paraphrased them, reworded just a little bit of them for the purpose of this flyer. But there is a North Carolina statute that essentially says uphold all FAA regulations. It is recommended that you take lessons before flying. Not, keyword recommended, not required. But at any time you can always schedule a time with me. Before school, after school, to try and just fly around a little bit to see, to help you make you a little bit more comfortable if you wish. Another recommended is to take the North Carolina Unmanned Aircraft Systems Operator Knowledge Test. If you can pass that, you pretty well will have covered most kind of situations that you can think of. It's a good test. Going back into that, taking pictures of other people's property. Again, there is leeway. I'm going to reference this picture here. This picture, looking back that way, you see all of this property. You see all of this property down here. I would imagine that whomever is flying this drone doesn't have everybody's permission in here. But the general rule that I've heard is identifiable information. So there's probably people who are outside right now in this picture, but you can't see them. You don't know who they are. If you take pictures of a crowd and you cannot see anybody who you cannot perfectly identify somebody in the crowd, then it's actually okay to take pictures of crowds. If you're taking pictures and you cannot clearly identify a house in the background, then you're okay. Just don't fall into the Bette Midler beach house problem. And look that one up. It's actually a pretty interesting story. But if you take pictures or video of somebody without their permission, and then it is viewed as identifiable in a court of law, you can be fined up to $5,000 per picture or video. I have to stress that part, per picture or video. So if you take 10 pictures of somebody without their permission, and the thing about this is that this includes things like thermal cameras, multispectral cameras. You know, if you do any of that, you take 10 pictures of somebody and you never gave them permission, they challenge you on that, then that could cost you $50,000 plus court fees. Okay, so just be very aware of what is around you anytime you plan on taking pictures. You cannot attach weapons. I hear this all the time. I talk to my family over the 4th, and of course they're all, mountain big hunters and everything, and they're like, well, why don't you just slap a gun on the drone? I'm like, well, that's illegal. And then they would try and kind of like work around it, like, nope, it's illegal. Nope, it's illegal. A common one that I have run into is like, can you attach a fishing lure to a drone and then fly the lure out further than what you could cast and drop it in the water? So say, for instance, like beach fishing and that kind of stuff. The lure does not count as a weapon, so I think in that part it's okay, but you cannot use a drone to engage in wildlife retainment sport, so hunting or fishing. And my dad actually asked the question. I said, well, it's my understanding, and if you want to go in and look at the statute and tell me if you interpret it differently, then please, by all means. But from my interpretation, I think the only way that you could do that and it be totally legal is you would have to drop the lure and then take the drone back and land it before the lure hit the water. So I would still rule no, in that you can't use it to go fishing, you can't use it to go hunting, you cannot use it to interfere with hunters. So if you don't like people hunting and fishing, you still can't use a drone to interfere with them, to interfere with those operations. And because you are supposed to have your remote ID going, if you do, then police or wildlife and gaming can track down your remote ID because it's being broadcast. They don't have to track it down, but then they can determine who owns the drone and then pursue it. So you can't interfere with hunters. Must launch, stay within, and land within the permissive property. So you always have to have permission. Sometimes when I fly at my house, I ask my neighbor, is it okay if the drone happens to go over into her yard, because the kids love to, have the drone chase them, and she's just like, yeah, that's okay. That's fine to cross that kind of property lines because I have the permission. But if I didn't, then I have to stay in my own little property. Now, what if you have property on the other side of the road? Again, it's a very delicate situation. And so say part of your property is on one side of the road, part of your property is on the other side of the road. I have to refer back to this one. At least at first, don't fly over people and moving vehicles. Well, so obviously if there is a car coming, you have to wait and cross the road until the car passes. However, and this is one of those, on the most technical explanation that I can give, if you cross the road, unless you own that road, so if you cross your driveway, that's fine. But if you cross like a state road or something like that, even if it's clear, you're changing property. The property changes. I think about like if we launched from Overhills High School and then went over to Overhills Elementary. Well, we've got Ray Road there. That's not Overhills property. So could we get in trouble? Yes. And then once again, don't fly near sensitive areas. Again, prisons, hospitals, schools, airports, you name it. That pretty well covers all of that part. I did want to also just kind of point out this last little bit here. You see this, you know, at first I thought there was a glitch or something in the before you fly app, and then I looked in a little bit more detail, and I ran across this one, the Blue Ridge Parkway. Can't fly on the Blue Ridge Parkway. You cannot fly a drone on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I've got a lot of friends back where I grew up that do, and I'm just like, well, don't let anybody catch you because you can't do it. But again, you hit that more, and there we go. National parks. Blue Ridge Parkway is considered a national park. All national parks are no-fly zones, and so flying here means stiff fines and penalties. You know, but that's pretty much it as far as the rules are concerned. Everything else, there's some other, you know, little technicalities here, like, wait a minute, is it going to let me? All right, let me zoom in a little bit more here. All right, yeah, this little tiny airport, technically you can fly around this airport, and if I were to guess, there's a special type of Class E airspace that surrounds this airport. You wouldn't be able to fly over 700 feet, but you're restricted to 400 feet. So just be careful. Anytime though, if you're going to fly near an airport, it's best to call and try and figure things out. And especially if you're going to be flying near an airport, I would highly recommend a radio. Anyway, I hope this helps. If you have questions, especially, you know, kind of case-specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. My email is mandrews, that is MANDREWS. So mandrews@harnett.k12.nc.us. Feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to get back to you on that one. I hope that this helps, and just give you kind of a quick rundown on the rules and regulations. I look forward to entertaining your questions later. Thank you, and have a great day.